A Requiem for Paper. The noted and seemingly immortal American fiction writer Ray Bradbury, now 91 years old and still going strong, published a novel in 1953, almost 60 years ago, that still speaks to me and countless others, thousands of others, both from the page and from the Netflix film file. The title of the book and the movie, which was made in 1966, is Fahrenheit 451. That's the temperature at which paper bursts into flame. It's a story about a future American society in which owning words in print is forbidden, and even reading is against the law. In the community in which the story takes place, the fire department is sometimes called to a house where books have been found. The men with the hoses are not there to put out the fire, but to set one, to burn the books, and the house in which they're hidden may become collateral damage. The main character in this dark drama is a fireman named Montag, who harbors doubts about the consequences of this restrictive law. The defining moment comes for him one day when he goes on an emergency call to destroy books in a suburban house that is reported to contain a secret library. At the scene, Montag revolts. He throws down his matches and walks off the job. His fellow workers and onlookers are so incensed by this dereliction of duty that Montag is forced to flee the town. Some critics interpreted this story as an outcry against book banning and censorship, which were frequent occurrences in the Cold War anti-communism era of Senator Joe McCarthy in the early 50s when the book was written. But Bradbury said he wasn't thinking about book burning. He was instead worried about what broadcasting, and especially television, was going to do to the time-honored practice of reading. Until radio was introduced in the 1920s and television just 2 decades after that, reading had absolutely no competition at all. Think of it. Until radio and television came along less than 100 years ago, the only way you could learn anything except talking face-to-face with someone was to read letters or magazines or newspapers or books. The commie chasers and book banners and censors will eventually burn themselves out, Bradbury said. But be worried about an approaching time when television will entice young people away from reading and a new age of ignorance will be upon us. I wonder how Mr. Bradbury is faring in the new electronic age. If he feared 60 years ago that communication on paper was facing genuine peril, what must he think of the internet and smartphones? Do you suppose he's on Facebook? Does he tweet? Well, I Googled him, and I found that he has a website, raybradbury.com, and a web newsletter, and a fan club, and a message board, and online video clips of the man himself at work in his paper-filled and cluttered office in the basement of his Los Angeles home. He's 91. You can tell the clips were all made the same day because they show Bradbury wearing the same blue shirt and tie and matching blue boxer shorts. You see him at his electric typewriter, but his computer is not visible. He admits to using the internet, but mostly for listening to music. On one of the video clips, Bradbury voices the same caution he raised about television in the 50s. Talking about computers, he says, is this just going to be a toy? Another expensive, elaborate toy for people to waste time on? It was a fair question back in the 50s, and it still is. Bradbury wrote Fahrenheit 451 on a rented typewriter, 10 cents an hour, in the basement of the UCLA library. This is a guy who finished high school and never went to college. He once said, "I got my education in libraries because they're free. College costs a lot of money." This is an old-fashioned typewriter guy, a copy paper guy, a throw-the-carriage guy, a pen and pencil guy, a real book guy as opposed to an e-book guy. They don't make them like Bradbury anymore. I wonder what made me think of him when I sat down to write this essay for Future Break and for Southern speakers, young people. You notice I'm not young. They have me on here for ballast. Bradbury's not Southern, no. If he ever came to Nashville, I must have been out of town. But then, picking up on some of the language in this future stuff, I saw this word, this Bantu word, nomo. This could be a nomo if it manages to speak Bradbury into existence as a scout. You know, there are three kinds of people in the world. There are leaders, there are followers, and there are scouts. Scouts are the ones who go out ahead alone to survey the landscape and come back to tell the rest of us what to expect when we cross the next mountain or the next river. Bradbury is one of the scouts who has guided me safely thus far. His scout was probably Aldous Huxley with his vision of a brave new world in 1932. And this is what I take away from Bradbury and Huxley and so many brave, visionary scouts. And this is what I want to pass on to you. Be wary of your machines. Save some paper, some pencils, pens, ink, and erasers. Don't forget how to put your thoughts fearlessly into words on paper. And if the power fails, you'll still be able to read and write.